Guys, how's it going? My name is Tamara Abrosimova, and you are listening to Confessions of an Actor. And I am here with Ryan CASON. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. CASON, did I say it right, or is it CASON? Or
Jason. Yeah, you said it right.
awesome, because I made a mistake on my very first podcast with
Mhm.
someone's last name. So yeah, I always like to make sure. All
Yeah,
right.
no, you got it right. Most people get confused and think it's a typo, so they say Carson. So you got it right.
Yay. Awesome. So, first question. Who is Ryan Kaysen? Tell me about him.
Yeah, that's a question I'm still trying to figure out myself. No, I am originally from Wilmington, Delaware. I was born at Christiana Care Hospital in Wilmington, Delaware in 1999, February 17th. And but I've lived most of my life in and around Chicago. And so when I was like 9 months old, my mom and I, we moved out to Chicago. We lived in the city for a little while. My dad followed us out a couple of years later. My mom and my dad were never married. They were dating, they were seeing each other, and my mom got pregnant. She had me. Um, and my dad moved out to Chicago to be closer to me. And then my mom got married. She got married to the man who would become my stepfather. And when I was around 4 or 5 years old, we moved up north to the suburbs of Chicago, this little suburb called Glencoe.
Mhm.
And while I was there, my dad, biological father, still lived in the city. And so I would go back and forth between Chicago and the suburbs all the time. Um, but I went to school in the suburbs, kindergarten all the way through graduating high school. I was in school in the suburbs, and I was for a long time. I guess I was kind of, and I still am, like one of the more nerdy kids, um, you know, and but I didn't get into acting or anything like that until like training for it, I guess, until high school.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was in a freshman in high school was the first time I started taking acting classes. And I had always enjoyed acting, or I had always known that I was going to go in that kind of direction because when I was 3 or 4 years old, my mom, my stepdad, and I, we went to go see the live version of The Lion King. Um, and I remember I was tiny then because I was only a few years old, and I was sitting in the aisle seat. And so there's the opening number of Circle of Life where all the actors come down the aisles and they're in these beautiful costumes dressed up as different African animals, and they're singing to the Circle of Life. And I remember looking up at one of the actresses as she was walking by, this beautiful
Yeah.
tall black woman, and she looked at, I forget what she was dressed up as, but she looked down at me and she had this huge smile. And there was just something about that image has stuck with me for a long time, obviously. And that was kind of my invitation to the stage, I guess. And I had my invitation to the screen because I do both theatrical and film acting. Is when I was like 2 years old, my mom took me to see E.T. when they
Mhm.
re-released E.T. in theaters for the 20th anniversary. And so I had, a lot of exposure to film and theater from a young age. Like my mom and my other family members of mine were taking me to see plays or having me watch movies. My dad was introducing me to movies all the time. And so I fell in love with that kind of creative world at a very young age. It just kind of took me a minute to get invested in it, I guess, which is what most of my high school journey was about getting more and more into the world of acting and filmmaking and making plays, making theater.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about me outside of the acting world. I play guitar, I sing, I write, I journal. I like to work out. I dabble in cosplay. People tell me that I look like Superman. So for the
Yeah.
first so for the first time earlier this year, well, now last year, but in I think it was in was either early December or mid-November. I don't remember. Yeah, early December. Chicago had its own version of Comic-Con. And so I went to that dressed up as Superman, which was a lot of fun. So I dabble in that a little bit. I think a pretty fitting hobby for an actor.
Yeah.
And then other than that, I'm just watching TV or movies, reading, or I'm working. I'm either working on acting or I'm doing my part-time job or something else.
Yeah, I gotcha. Do you remember your first stage play or first play?
Yes. The first play I auditioned for and got into was in high school. I was my sophomore year in high school, and it was Little Women.
Mhm.
And I auditioned for it, and I remember the director for it and he became pretty close. A guy named Thomas Maliff. He's still involved with theater and doing his thing in Chicago. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, it was my first time being it was my first real introduction to the stage, because my freshman year I was taking a freshman acting class, and we did like this little one act play where I had a few lines, but it wasn't an audition process. I didn't try out for it. I was just given a role. So
Mhm.
this was like my first play ever auditioning for, and I got a role, and so that was a nice confidence booster. And I got cast as John Brooke, who is Meg, the oldest sister, her love interest.
Mhm.
Um, and it was a wonderful experience. Like I said, I was surrounded by a lot of very talented people, a lot of very kind people. My director, Thomas Maliff, he was incredible director, very, very supportive, very, very charismatic, down to earth guy. I made quite a few friends through that. And like I said, it was my introduction to the world of acting, or one of my introductions, I should say. And what I really loved about it was, I mean, when you're on stage and you make people laugh in the audience, is because there are some comedic moments in the play. And I also had this experience with a little one act play that I did my freshman year. Is that when you make people laugh like that, there's such a feedback, like such a validation of what you're doing, that it's very fulfilling.
Yeah.
And I would have that kind of experience, not just with laughter, but with emotion, period, as I continue to act. And so for me, having those moments of, oh, okay, this is making people feel something, was very validating for me, and was very fueling for me, and is part of the reason why I'm still doing this. You
Yeah,
know, um, yeah.
it's awesome. What was your most memorable experience in
With acting
theater?
and theater,
Both
um, both. Okay, in
film and
theater, in theater, that's a really good question. I don't know, because in high school I had a very memorable experience where I played where we did the play The Laramie Project. And The Laramie Project is documentary theater, and what that means is that everything that you are saying, it's essentially an interview that was done, but instead of it being like a documentary where you film the interview, you have actors play the interviewees. So all the lines, everything there was all said by real people in interviews. And so the Laramie Project is a play about Matthew Shepard. Matthew Shepard was a young man, a young gay man who lived in Laramie, Wyoming, who was abducted, beaten, and left to die. He did die by two men who were also living in Laramie.
yeah.
And what the play centers around is a series of interviews with the different townspeople after the murder, a few years after the murder. And so we all played multiple characters. I remember I played John Peacock, who was Matthew Shepard's teacher,
Mhm.
and I played Robert Debris, who was the lead detective in the case, the lead, the guy handling the case. and Debris was an interesting character because I mean both of them are real people, and so that was also my first experience with playing real people, and so that was an interesting experience. Of I couldn't really find too much information on John Peacock, but because Robert Debris was the head detective in the case, he was pretty public figure, and so I found a lot of photos with him or of him, and some written interviews. Never found any video footage or anything like that, but it was still an interesting experience of seeing pictures of this guy and being like, okay, let me kind of piece together how this guy probably carries himself. I remember experimenting with how I would hold my jaw and like feeling weight on my jaw because he's a heavier man.
Yeah.
I was quite tall and skinny. And so it was an experience, number one, because of the acting. It was my best acting up to that point, I feel, when I was a junior in high school. And it was also going back to that idea of feedback from your audience when they have an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
With earlier plays I had done, it was mostly laughter. With the play I was in my sophomore year with Little Women. Earlier my junior year, I was in a play called She Kills Monsters, which is kind of a dramedy, and about the world of Dungeons and Dragons. And so that was a lot of fun. But with this play, the feedback, the emotional feedback that I got was, I remember the last night we were doing this play, there were a lot of tears in the audience. Like we were doing this final vignette sort of thing, this final stage picture, and we all had our backs turned to the audience. And I could hear behind us people sniffling and people crying. And there was something very touching about that. The fact that, our play made people that emotional, and that people were, just touched or moved by what we had created in the stories that we were telling. So that was very impactful. And and that was probably my most memorable theater experience. I've had a lot of memorable theater experiences since then, some positive, some negative. But that was definitely one of the most positive ones. And then a memorable experience with acting in general is honestly whatever the last acting experience was. Like, because you put up so much time and energy into each individual project, it ends up being like whatever the last project was is what you remember. I mean, there are so many little projects and things that I remember the summer between my junior year and senior year of high school. I did this program at Northwestern called the Cherubs program, where I studied film acting with a bunch of other students. And that was a super memorable experience, made a lot of friends there. But I would say like the most, the one that I'm thinking about right now is just simply the one that I'm involved with right now is a Zoom play called Bennett's Cow-Eyed Girl, written and directed by this man named Damien Westfall, who is really great writer, really great director. I've really enjoyed working with him. I've really enjoyed working with my fellow cast. My two main fellow actors are Benjamin Newmark and Mark Tierno. Both incredibly talented, both very wonderful people. It's been an incredible time working with them. And that I guess that I would just have to say that is whatever the most recent thing or whatever I'm involved with right now is what is most memorable to me, because it's what I'm in. It's what I'm in at the moment. Maybe when I'm, 50 years old or 100 years old, I'll look back and be able to pick one experience out. But, for now, it's kind of what I'm involved with.
Okay. What roles do you get cast as?
What roles do I get cast as? That's an interesting question. I've had a lot of people ask me that question, especially non-actors or people who are not within the acting community, because there's that whole thing of the typecast, which is absolutely real. Yeah, and so, but I find it interesting because I get seen a lot of the times as like I guess like the like a romantic male lead or like the handsome guy. but I've gotten cast a lot as I guess, for lack of a better term, or there probably is a better term, I just can't think of one. But I guess like a social outcast. So like in my sophomore year of college, we put on a production of Three Sisters, an adapted version of it.
Mhm.
Um, it was adapted and directed by this woman named Whitney White, who was a wonderful director. I loved working with her. And she did a wonderful job adapting the play. And I played Solioni, Captain Solioni, who in the play is kind of a he's an awkward, strange guy. He While everybody else is partying and drinking and getting drunk, Solioni is kind of over in the corner watching everybody with a stink eye. He has a journal. He reads poetry. He deals with PTSD because he has this bottle of cologne that he's always putting on his hands, and he smells his hands every time, and he says it still smells like a dead man. So he's also traumatized. He's a captain in the army. He's been through some shit. And so I've been cast as those kind of roles too. And then I've also been cast as like little brother roles. I just did in October a short film with some DePaul students, and the character I was cast at was like the young brother of this group of people trying to survive a monster apocalypse. And so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I will say that I'm not. I don't have an agent, and I'm not in a union yet, so I'm not super in the professional world yet. And so we'll see how that changes once I am in that once I am more in that world, that side of the things. Maybe then my type will really solidify itself, and I'll start getting cast in like similar roles.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I've considered myself, in terms of the roles I've been able to play so far in my relatively short time as an actor. I find myself grateful for the fact that I've been able to play a multitude of roles.
Mhm.
For the fact that I am able to play, I've been able to play characters like Solioni, who's a bit more of an outcast, or I've been able to play roles like John Brooke in Little Women, who's definitely like a Clark Kent love interest kind of guy. I've been grateful to just be part of an ensemble, like in She Kills Monsters. I just was one of the creatures, and I was able to partake in a lot of stage combat. And then, I've been grateful to be cast in, tons, other kinds of roles as well. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does. Yes. Thank you. And
Yeah.
what is the ideal role for you, though?
The ideal role for me. That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, right now it comes and goes. Right now, maybe it's just because of how much people are saying I look like him and the fact that I dressed up as him. I would love to play Superman. I think that depending on who sees this, I might get a lot of flack for this, but I thought that Man of Steel, the 2012-2013 film with Henry Cavill,
Mhm.
was an incredible superhero movie, period, and a great adaptation of the Superman story, because it Chloe Zhao, who wrote and directed Nomadland and who directed the recent Marvel movie The Eternals, she put it perfectly that in every society we kind of have our Superman or Ubermensch, and that excuse me, and that the way that they approached Man of Steel was approaching that myth, approaching that legend, that character from a standpoint of what would this person, Superman is not human, he's an alien, but this human being, who would he be if he actually existed? Like, what would this person be like if they were told one day as a little kid that, hey, you're not our son, you're not even human, you're an alien, you're from a totally different galaxy, and by the way, you have insanely superhuman powers, and you now have to decide what you're going to do with those powers. Like, what would that do to somebody's mind? What would that do to somebody's psyche? How would that impact somebody? And I think what Man of Steel was doing was very was investigating that, was investigating what would this person really be like. And I found that really interesting. And I think that if I were lucky enough to play that character, that's the route I would want to go, because I find that much more compelling than the kind of older Christopher Reeve Superman, who I
Mhm.
love. You know, Christopher Reeve is a fantastic actor, and his rendition of Superman is a classic. But I found that Henry Cavill's portrayal of Superman to be more compelling and more interesting. You know,
Yeah.
and a thing I would also love to investigate with that character, because I like looking at characters that a lot of times people are like, oh, that's kind of a cliche character, and being like, no, let's actually go deep with it. You know, if it's a cliche, it's a cliche for a reason, because we want to keep visiting it, and if we want to keep visiting it, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Um, and so one of the things I would also really like to investigate with that character is the fact that Superman would not be Superman without the love that he received in his life. You know, I believe that so much of who we are is what we've been fed, and so much of who we are is what has hurt us and how we respond to that pain.
Mhm.
And so Superman, Clark Kent, could have become the most evil, destructive force on the planet in
Yeah.
that universe, you know, but he didn't, because he was loved, and he was loved by people who, in a way, had no business loving him, but who still loved him unconditionally. You know, the Kents, who found him and adopted him, and then from there he became Superman, because he learned to do the good things.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I would also love to investigate with that character, is the fact that he wasn't born Superman, the fact that he became Superman. He chose to become that person, and he was helped along the way by people that loved him. And I just find that really, really interesting and really powerful.
It is really interesting. I've personally never thought about it that way.
Right.
But yeah. So what are your 2022 goals?
My
Now that
2022
we're
goals.
here.
Yeah, yeah. My 2022 goals, definitely when it comes to acting, is an agent. I want to start getting more involved in the professional world. Chicago, where I'm living right now, is thankfully a city where you don't need an agent to get work. Like the director I'm working with right now, Damien, he offered me a role in his next Zoom play, and so I'm going to be busy with that. And then I'm also understudying for a new play that will begin rehearsals in January, called The Black Knight, which is being done through Lifeboat Theater Productions, Lifeboat or Lighthouse. I know there's a lie in the name, an LIH. But I'll be understudying for a couple roles with that play, and that's what I've heard from a lot of Chicago actors who I've met and who I've talked to, is that Chicago there's a lot of work, there's a lot happening in Chicago, a lot of theater, musical theater, film and TV with the different Chicago shows. You know, there's tons of colleges here in Chicago, and so there's lots of student films. There's Northwestern, which is up in Evanston, just a couple miles north of the city. And so, you know, Chicago, you don't need an agent to be working, even if the work is, you know, in smaller independent theaters. It's, you
Yeah.
know, it might not be the most lucrative. You might not be getting the most money, but you know, you're still working on your craft, and you're still doing what you like to be doing, what you love to be doing. And I think that, you know, if you're doing this, you're doing it because you like it, because it's not exactly the most comfortable or secure of lifestyles, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so, but with that being said, having an agent would still be wonderful, because agents hear about things that I know I'm not hearing about on Backstage or Actors Access. And so it would just be, it'd be nice to have, you know, somebody else on my team who would be helping me out, you know, helping me find work. And so that's definitely one goal. I think another goal is just to keep growing. Just simple as that, just to keep growing, to keep trying things and making mistakes, and see where all that takes me, and learning and all of that, you know. Because the last thing I want to do is become stagnant and believe that I have it all figured out, because I don't. Nobody does. And
Okay.
No, nobody does. And I like learning. I like learning too. Whether it be about, some kind of subject outside of myself or learning about myself. So yeah, I think those are some of my goals for 2022. Get an agent and just continue to grow and develop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to aspiring actors?
Um, Another very good question. There's a lot of advice I would give.
We
um,
have time.
yeah, yeah. Where to start? Well, let me start with one idea, and then I'll go from there. One idea I have is when you're working on a character, ask yourself what has. I mean, first off, always treat your character as a human being. Your our art form is to portray human beings. We call them characters, but really they're human beings, and that's our job. And I use the term human being loosely because obviously we're not always playing strictly human beings.
Mhm.
But for lack of a more universal, you're playing a sentient being. You're playing an aware living thing. And so treat that being as such. And also ask the question, what has hurt that person or that being? Because like I said earlier, I think that so much of who we are as human beings is what has hurt us and how we have responded to that hurt. And so much of our fears and our anxieties and our worries stem from that, but also so much of who we want to be, our dreams, our hopes, our aspirations. Like, if you've been in a bad relationship or multiple bad relationships, you're scared of being in another one. And you will treat certain situations with a kind of suspicion or fear,
Mhm.
or you'll become used to those kind of situations. But you'll also be hoping on some level, whether it be, you're actively hoping and searching for it, or deep down, you're also, I would argue, actively hoping for something that is not an unhealthy relationship. You're actively hoping and searching for something that will give you the comfort and the compassion and the love that we're all looking for. We're human beings. I think this is another piece of advice that I would give to actors is remember that, as human beings, we're all on a very, very baseline general sense, kind of looking for the same thing, which is connection and love. And I think having that really helps. There's a wonderful book by Michael Shurtleff, who I'm sure a lot of fellow actors know about, called Audition. Where
Yes, the tiny book. Yeah.
Mhm. And he always emphasizes in building a character and creating the character, or investigating the human being, is find the love. Your choices should be motivated by love, even if it's only a tiny little bit there. Even if you're not in love with this
Mhm.
person you're in the scene with, there is something keeping you in that room, and it should be, love is the right way to go with that, because love, I believe, is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, motivating force in our lives. So that would be some advice. Always treat your characters as a human being. uh, Ask and investigate what has hurt them, which is kind of like you have to kind of backward track, like, oh, this person is exhibiting this behavior here. What happened to them over here that could
Yeah.
have led to that behavior? Choose love. That's some advice, not just for when you're creating characters, but in real life.
Mhm.
Choose love, choose compassion, choose kindness. It's hard, and we fail and fuck up at it all the time. I know I do. I fail and fuck up at it all the time, but it's necessary, I think, for being a more fledged human being yourself and for helping others become the same. Um, some more advice I would give to actors is, uh, trust yourself, really, and believe that you are enough. That within you and through the experience you've had and through your imagination and through your all of it, that you are enough, and that you have the ability and the right to play characters and to portray people on stage that is compelling to you. I've heard from so many different actors that they would just get upset because they keep getting trapped in the same kind of roles, like they're typecast, and they get angry at it and all of that.
They're still cast though.
Yes, that's also the thing. That's also the thing is like, but yeah, you're still getting work. And so I don't know, it's a balance. And again, I'm also speaking about this from the point of view who, as I said earlier, is, not really in the professional world yet. So I'm speaking with limited experience. But I guess what I would say from there is, as an actor or just as a human being, trust yourself and learn to, how do I want to put this? Learn to, believe in yourself, all of that. But learn that you are enough, that you, how do I want to put this? Now I've opened up a Pandora's box of all the things that I want to say. Yeah, there's deeper and better ways for me to say what I'm trying to say. But it's not coming to me right now. I guess the best way I can put it is by giving it some context. Is like, I've been in therapy. This is going to sound strange, but I've been in therapy most of my life.
We all have.
Yeah, well, a lot of us have. A lot of us,
yes.
Not
right.
all of us. And I'm talking about us as human beings. A lot of us as actors have, but not everybody, not all people. And so having been in therapy most of my life and journaling and all of that, I would also say that for actors, self-awareness is very important. It's funny because acting is interesting because in order to really well portray somebody else, you have to go deep inside yourself. You have to look within yourself and find those parts of yourself that you might not like to show others, or the parts of yourself that you might be ashamed of, this, that, or the other. But you've got to bring them out, and you've got to fill the character in with your imagination, your experiences, your thought, all of that. And so something that's helped me is, obviously therapy, journaling, things like that, things that help increase my my awareness of myself and who I am. Stella Adler has a wonderful quote where she says, I'm paraphrasing here, where she says, before you can go on stage and really play a character, you have to know yourself. And that's how I kind of connect to it, is, really learning about who you are, so then you can really bring yourself to the work. Because even though, like I said, we are portraying other people, in order to portray those other people, we got to bring the most of ourselves. And so yeah, that's what I would say is self-awareness and self-investigation and all of that within the bounds of it being healthy and not going overboard with it.
All right.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.